Hi, I'm Zach Childs, and welcome to the Truetone Lounge. Today, our guest is Bob Britt. Bob, thank you for coming down.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Awesome.
well, tell us. First off, as I had said in the teaser, you're kind of a journeyman guitarist. You've played with a wide variety of artists, from like I said, Leon Russell to Delbert McClinton and the Dixie Chicks, and played on Dylan's Time Out of Mind. So, what got you into music? Specifically, what's the first album you remember hearing?
I guess Clapton, hearing Clapton, Cream. I liked Dave Mason and Pink Floyd. I loved David Gilmour,
And what was your first paying gig?
In high school at some point, I played, that was my, the first bands that I got into were in high school. I had this little band. We played, I think I was a junior in high school I was a freshman in high school. And we played, our school had a thing called the Junior Jollies, and it was a talent show. We worked up Loan Me a Dime from the Duane Allman anthology, which it was Boz Scaggs.
It was Boz Scaggs, off the album he cut in Muscle Shoals.
Yeah.
With Duane playing.
Yeah. And I learned Duane's stuff note for note.
Wow.
That whole thing. So that was a big influence on me,
How did you decide that you wanted to do music professionally?
I don't think I ever planned anything my whole life. I just kind of walk along and follow the path that
serendipity.
Yeah, God lays out for me, and it falls in my lap, and I just do what I do. That's kind of weird. I don't plan anything really.
So, what was your first artist of note that you played with?
Leon Russell.
Okay, and so how did you get the gig playing with Leon Russell?
I got that gig. I was born in Iowa, but lived in Evansville, Indiana. And when I lived in Evansville, Indiana, my older brother Tom became really good friends. Really, his best friend was John Cowan, who's the Newgrass Revival's bass player, and now Doobie Brothers bass player.
Right.
Phenomenal singer. So Newgrass was Leon's band in the late 70s.
They did an album together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were parting ways, and John suggested me Leon said, I want to put a rock band together, any guitar players. And I was in Mexico City, and I got a phone call from John's wife.
From John Cowan's wife?
John Cowan's wife, Liz. She tracked me down. I was playing with an Elvis impersonator.
With the jumpsuit?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and his dad was a tailor, so he had nice jumpsuits.
Yeah. So, were you dressed up like James Burton? Did you have a paisley telly?
No, I didn't have a paisley telly, but that was a great gig because I learned all that stuff.
Yeah,
You know,
great,
all the
great
Burton
parts.
stuff. Oh yeah,
You got the Scotty
phenomenal.
Moore stuff, the Reggie Young, and
Yeah,
the James Burton
yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
So it was actually it was a good education. Somebody put together like a impersonator show down in Mexico City at a hotel, and you know, there was a Marilyn Monroe and a Sinatra and you know all that.
Yeah.
And we were contracted to be down there for I don't know how long it was, but things got squirrely. You know, people weren't being paid, and fortunately, I got this phone call.
Yeah.
Said, you know, Leon's looking for a guitar player. Can you come out and audition?
Yeah.
So I basically snuck out of there in the middle of the night, got to the airport, and flew home. And
Did you have to leave any gear behind or anything?
I did. I left this 69 Deluxe Reverb. But my the bass player, who's a great friend of mine, had it. That's a whole other story. I ended up getting it back maybe 10 years ago.
So you leave the amp in Mexico, you get it back, you know, many years later. So let's get back to the
So
timeline.
anyway, so I got the call and I
Yeah.
got out of Mexico and came to Nashville, to Hendersonville, to his house,
Okay.
and played for him. And the only thing is, you know, John just said, just play like Freddie King. That's all, you know, and you'll get the gig. So I started, you know, well, for the whole time before I went there, that's all I listened to was Freddie.
Yeah. Because, there was a Freddie King album that was done on Shelter Records.
There were two
It was
or
Texas Cannonball.
three
Or
of them. Yeah.
So I guess Leon was a fan.
There's oh yeah,
Yeah.
and he had one of Freddie's guitars when I was with him. I played it was a Brown 345.
Wow.
Anyway, I came and auditioned for him and got the gig. Flew back I lived in the Bay Area at the time. Flew back. I had a 72 Nova and I loaded up what I could fit in it and drove to Nashville. And that started that gig. I think it was 81. I remember my first gig was in Atlanta. It was in a Agora Ballroom, I think, or a Fox, I don't know. But I remember that walking out on stage, my knee was just shaking like crazy. I'd never been in a situation like that. You know?
What was it? Because being in a nice old theater, playing with Leon, playing with the other guys in the band.
Just everything. You know, playing with Leon Russell now. You know, going from playing with an Elvis impersonator to playing with Leon Russell.
It's a big jump.
Yeah, and in front of the huge sold out theater, and it was big. You know, and that wore off, and now it's it doesn't matter if you're playing for 20,000 or 20. Yeah.
But still, it's a great great moment.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. While playing with Leon, there's a photo of you with Clapton and Jesse Ed Davis.
Uh-huh.
So at what point? So how long had you been playing with Leon before this picture was taken? Where you or had you met them before that? Eric Clapton and Jesse Ed Davis.
That's the first time I met Clapton, but
Okay.
I've been around Jesse quite a bit because I think that was mid to late 80s. I'm trying to think when Jesse died.
He died in the late 80s.
Yeah. And it was not long before he died. But when we played out in the LA area, Jesse always came out and sat in with us. Unbelievable guitar player, Dr. My Eyes, that's Jesse playing.
Yeah.
But all of you folks.
Yeah, some of the folks might not know that Jesse Ed was one of the few guys that he would be asked by it's like he played the slide intro to "Hello Old Friend" for Clapton.
Yeah.
He's the guy that Dwayne Allman saw and wanted to play like him because he played Statesboro Blues with Taj Mahal.
Yeah.
I mean, he played Dr. My Eyes. He played with all the Beatles except for Paul at different times. He's on the Concert for Bangladesh.
Yeah.
He was just a very influential guitar player that unfortunately he kind of got into some substances and
Yes.
in his he wasn't able to cut it for a while. So
Yeah.
so when you were getting to play with him, was he on, playing
Oh
wise?
yeah,
Yeah.
in general, yeah, he played great.
Yeah.
He had demons,
Yeah.
and they eventually took him, and his wife gave me his yellow telly that he was always playing at the end after he passed.
Wow. Why did she give you that?
Well, it's just because she knows that I guess we really cared for each other, and she told me that the first time that he came and saw Leon and I was playing guitar, he came home and he was just raving about this guitar player that he had seen. And so he always came out, and I always made sure he sat in
Yeah.
and played and it's great because I've stolen stuff from him. That's how
Yeah.
you get your thing. You steal stuff from what you like. And I would intentionally play Jesse Ed licks while he's standing next to me.
Mm-hmm.
That's great because he'd just go, you know. So she gave me that guitar, and I really never played it. I don't,
Yeah.
it's just kind of sat in its case. And then I got a call. She called me, probably 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and the Smithsonian was doing a installation in New York City honoring American Indian artists and, of all types. And Jesse was going to be one of them.
Wow.
And wanted to know if they could have a guitar. And so she asked me, because she gave that to me. She gave one to Yoko, and she gave one to, I think, Jackson Browne. So I sent it to the Smithsonian. They had it for a couple of years. And then they sent it back. And then, I don't know, a few months ago, I was just looking around, and there it sat in its case, and I thought, this needs a home somewhere. And so I called Steve Ripley, who's an Oklahoma.
Yeah. He was in the Tractors, and
right.
recording
Yeah.
producer.
Yeah. And I said, I've got this Jesse guitar, and I think it should go in a museum. Is there someplace out there where should I send it? And he said, well, let me put you in touch. They're building a new museum in Tulsa. It's called OK Pop. And it's going to be right across the street from Kane's Ballroom.
Mm-hmm.
And so I gave it to them. The guy came down. He drove down here to Nashville, and I passed it off. So it's going to have a, home where people can enjoy it.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did I'm guessing that Sunburst telly that Jesse played a lot, was that guitar already gone? Or?
I think so. Yeah.
I think it was
Yeah.
got sold for other purposes.
Yeah. The Doctor in My Eyes guitar, I think, was like a blue, like Placid blue one, maybe, I think.
Yeah.
And I think maybe Jackson got that. I think maybe that was still around. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then Clapton. So how did the Clapton thing happen? So he was friends with, I guess, with Leon, and then he would show up, and then he would be asked to sit in.
Cale would show up, J.J. Cale.
Right.
But he would never play.
Okay.
He's got a weird stage fright thing about him.
Okay.
There's stories of him doing shows where he actually he has his back to the audience when he's playing. But we played at Trancas, which is this little bar in Malibu, and we were doing 2 nights there. And first night, Jesse came out, and and Cale, Jesse and Cale came, and Jesse played, I think, and Cale wouldn't play. I said, man, bring a guitar tomorrow and come up and play. I got all kinds of amps. I got, I had 4 amps out there. I don't know why. I had 2 supers and a boogie and something else. And so the next night, I'm backstage in the dressing room, restringing, and Jesse came in, and he restrung his guitar. And we're both doing that. And then he said, I'm gonna go pee. So, and the only restroom in this place, it's tiny, is out in the bar. And so I finished up and went out to find him and walk by the bar, and there at the bar is Cale and Clapton and Jesse.
Wow.
So,
3 big icons of guitar. Yeah.
And I did a double take, and I went to the bathroom, and then I walked up there, and Cale said, "Well, Bob, man, I'm sorry I didn't bring a guitar, but I brought my buddy along, and maybe you can talk him into playing some."
Yeah.
So he did. We played, I think we did about 4 or 5 songs. And Leon's playing, and he's singing, he's going, "It's guitar night, it's guitar night." And, and Clapton and Jesse, and they're just sitting at a table, a couple of tables back. And so he finally got them to get up, and they basically started the show over just about, so played the whole night. And Eric played this.
Wow.
And Jesse played his Yellow Telly, and I played this 63 that I've had. I think I've had that guitar longer than any guitar.
Okay.
And so afterwards I had Eric sign it. We're all hanging out on the bus. It was Eric and another guy that always came out was Gary Busey.
Mm-hmm.
Gary, at some point, played drums with Leon.
Wow.
And I think Cheech was there, or Chong, one of them.
Yeah.
Jerry Williams, songwriter.
Yeah,
Yeah, phenomenal. Well, just hung out, and so I had him sign this.
Yeah.
And now it's covered up. It said "To Bob with all my heart." You can kind of still see it. Eric clapped it, and then he put a little X under it. I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
But then years later, I was playing with the Dixie Chicks at Sheryl Crow had a thing in Central Park.
Mm-hmm.
And I was there the day before, dress rehearsal or whatever it was, sound check. And I'm just standing around, and all of a sudden I hear "Happy," the Rolling Stones.
Mm-hmm.
And it's undoubtedly Keith.
Yeah.
I had no idea that he was even there. So I thought, well, I'll have him sign it too.
Yeah.
So at some point, we're just all kind of hanging out, and it was the next day, it was the show day. So I thought, well, I'll have him sign it. So I kind of said, "Hey, Keith, could you sign this and will you sign this?" Like, here.
This is your spot.
Yeah. And he grabbed it and went, 99.
Yeah.
I didn't understand a word he said.
So back to to Leon Russell. So getting to play with Jesse Ed and Clapton. What were some of the things that you learned from them? Getting to play with them and hear them. Was it just kind of being in awe, or
I don't know. I think you unconsciously absorb things from people, from everything you ever hear.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never been a guy that tries to learn things purposefully from
Mm-hmm.
people, or from players, except for like early on when I was young.
Right.
Then when I was obviously just learning how to play guitar.
It's like so many times, for almost any classic guitar, riff, you can find, somebody showing you how to play it on YouTube.
There's a video of it.
Yeah, and it's free, and you just
Right.
watch it.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a big deal in the 80s when they had like those Starlicks videos where you could, in the Hot Licks videos,
Right.
where you could actually get a VHS and see, Lukather or Larry Carlton or Albert Lee, playing licks
Yeah.
on your VHS at home.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I don't know that I'd, from actually standing next to him,
yeah,
did anything, but be a great experience and a great memory, and and hanging out with him. I did get to meet a whole lot of people playing with Leon.
Yeah. Who were some of the other highlights of guys that you got to meet?
Some of the Toto guys, the people would just come out. Brian Wilson came out one time, and knocked on the bus door, and I went to the door, and it's Brian, and that was pretty
That's
bizarre.
Pretty trippy.
He's out.
Yeah.
Well, Burton, You know, he'd come to Leon's. A lot of people came to Leon's house out
Yeah.
there, you know, and people would, you know, I answered the phone one time and it was George Harrison, you know, calling just to talk. Bruce Hornsby came and spent a few days there because Leon was a big influence on Bruce.
Yeah.
And we were rehearsing with, Edgar Winter was in the band for a few years, three and a half years. And that happened from, he opened a show somewhere and Leon asked him if he'd join the band.
So after Leon Russell, what's next? And how did that come to an end?
I got a registered letter telling me my services were no longer needed.
Oh, okay.
Which was interesting. And looking back, I kind of wonder if he was doing me a favor.
Okay.
You know, we've remained friends, and you know, he just passed,
Right.
and he had triple bypass surgery, and he had a lot of other. He just was not in good health before that, and so I'd go to the hospital and see him and tell him, "Man, you got to fight."
Yeah.
Or, you know, the only way you're going to get better is fight. You got to get up, move around.
Mm-hmm.
And he couldn't. He had a hard time walking in the first place. He's been using one of those scooters for years. And I didn't see the fight in him. And then
Yeah.
I went and saw him a week before he passed. I went to his house. John Cowan and I went together. And he and his wife, and we got in his car, and he loved cars. He had a Tesla.
Mm-hmm.
And we got in the Tesla and went to Cracker Barrel, and one of his favorite places, had lunch. And then I went back and, you know, visited for a while. And I'm so glad I did that. You know, I got to tell him I love him. I always told him I love him.
Yeah.
Because he was a huge part of my life. You know, I played with him for 9-10 years.
It's a
Started
long
when I was
time.
22, I guess. And he was kind of like a second father in a way, you know.
Yeah.
I lived at his house for, I don't know, 2 or 3 years maybe. But even when I moved out and got a place, I was still there all the time, engineering. And then on the road, it was me and him and his wife, my brother in a motorhome, and the rest of the guys in a bus or something for the first good long while. So, and it was either him driving or me driving, and the other one in the jump seat. And you know, he's kind of the reason I married the girl I married. He just told me, man, he would talk about her and say, you need to just marry her and start having babies.
Yeah.
So we did. That's Etta,
Yes.
my wife.
Yeah.
She was Melissa Pruitt originally. She was in a singer in David Sugar years before I met her. But yeah, so that's what we did. And he was, yeah, I mean, just beside everything I learned from him musically, he taught me things, you know, whether intentionally or not. You know, I learned so much. He's left side is the strong side. I thought it was polio. It wasn't. I found out later it wasn't polio from when I spoke at his funeral and just talking with people. So his right side was kind of, he called it his gimp side.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a lot of the reason his style is what it was. His left hand is so strong. But and so I learned a lot about how the bass relates to clusters, you know, chord clusters and stuff like that. He affected my tone a lot. I think back then I used too much distortion and too much treble, and he'd say, "Oh, you got to do this, you got to do that." And
Yeah. So he would just give you general instructions on tone?
Yeah, just say, "Man, that's too bright," you know.
Yeah.
Or, you know, That's too dirty. Clean it up, you know.
Yeah.
And I did, and I'm very grateful. You know.
Why are you grateful?
I don't know. I've kind of have just been more of a purist since that.
Yeah.
I guess. When we were kids, you get, I had that first pedals were, distortion plus, the MXR stuff. That's what there was.
Yeah.
The distortion plus and a phase shifter. I hate phase now.
It was so overused there in the 70s.
Oh man,
Yeah.
yeah, awful.
Yeah.
I still have a couple of the old red Dynacomps, which are really great, but I don't really use them as a compressor. I use it as a boost. I have a couple of different boards that I hit that first, and
Yeah.
don't have one on this board. But, so yeah, he was pretty influential in my whole, and playing with somebody for that long.
Yeah.
Naturally, you just pick up everything. That, I mean, when I sing, sometimes I sing. People tell me I have that, a little of him in me, and I'm glad for that too. I'm glad for everything.
Yeah. So he sends you a registered letter. Your services are no
Right.
longer needed.
Yeah.
And so what happens next?
I think my next gig, as far as gigs went, was Lionel Cartwright.
Okay.
And I played with him for a little while, a couple of years, I guess.
He was on MCA.
Yeah. And
Stuart Smith probably played on it. I think
Yeah.
Tony Brown
Yeah.
produced it.
yeah, I think I played on one track. They appeased him and let his band play on a track.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the lines, I started doing session work.
Okay.
But I did Lionel's gig. And then interestingly, when I was leaving that, I just left that gig and I was playing with somebody at 12th and Porter. And this guy came up to me and he said, "Hey, I'm a guitar player. I'm just moved to town and I'm trying to find a gig, man. If you could help me out, I've got a tape here." And
Yeah.
it was Bukovac.
Okay.
Yeah. And I said, "Well, I'm getting ready to leave this gig. I'll give it to Lionel." So that was Book's first gig when he came to town.
Yes. He told me about that. He didn't tell me that you were the guitar player
Yeah.
before him on that, but he told me that Lionel was his first
Yeah.
gig.
Yeah. Book gave me a cassette and I gave it to Lionel.
Yeah.
And boy, Book is an amazing guitar player.
He is. Yeah.
It's just phenomenal.
So where does the Bob Dylan album "Time Out of Mind" come in?
When it was, I can't tell you. It was late
Okay.
90s.
Okay.
It's hell getting old. You lose all your memories.
But how did you end up getting called? So did Dylan call you himself, or like management, or how'd you get called to play on a Dylan album?
I was playing again at 12th and Porter, playing, I think, with Jonelle. I look out in the audience and there's Bob Dylan. And Bucky Baxter, who I've known Bucky
Plays
for years.
pedal
Steel.
steel.
I think Bucky was there. Tony Garnier, his bass player. And we played a set, and I smoked cigarettes at the time, and I went outside and stood on the sidewalk and was having a cigarette, and there was a few Harleys parked there, and I'm just standing there looking at them, and Bob walks up and introduces himself.
That's a little surreal.
Yeah.
And Bob Dylan.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and just say, "Hey, I'm Bob. I really like your playing." And we talked for a few minutes, and he was playing at T-Pack and invited me out. And
To come see the show.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I went, saw the show, and was standing on the side of the stage. And after the show, he walked right over to me, and we talked a little bit more. And then it was like 2 years later, I got a call. "Bob wants you to come and play on this record." Well, now, actually, I went out. I got another call before the record, I guess, to fly out to L.A. to play with him at center staging. It's like SIR's
Right.
rehearsal. I guess to see if maybe I would fit in his road band.
Okay.
Played, I think, a couple of days with him, and it was, surreal. At the time, he was playing guitar.
Mm-hmm.
And he played, the way he plays guitars, he doesn't really play rhythm. He plays these little lines and things. And, and he's just telling me, I'm not soloing, I'm playing, these are just little things, and you need, just see if you can play around them. And anyway, I didn't, obviously, I didn't tour with him. So, but, and I played acoustic guitar on some of that stuff, and I guess he really was impressed with my acoustic playing.
Okay.
Because when I got the call to go to Miami and do that record, I loaded up a trunk full of stuff and amps and got there, and Daniel Lanois was like, "What's all this?" I said, "Well, it's my gear." I said,
Yeah.
"Oh, I thought you were just playing acoustic." He said, "Yeah, Bob told me you're the best acoustic player he'd ever heard." But I didn't know, any of that. And I did play acoustic on some of that record, but I played mostly electric. But that whole thing about weaving around what he's playing, I guess I never figured that out.
Yeah.
The guy who plays with him, played with him for years, New York guy, also plays fiddle and mandolin. Larry Campbell.
Yeah.
He's the best guy I ever saw with Bob doing that. I don't know how he figured that out, but Larry's a phenomenal guy.
Tell us about working with Daniel Lanois. I mean,
he's an interesting guy. We were there for 3 weeks at Criteria. Great.
yeah, famous.
Famous place. Yeah, Layla.
Yeah.
And it was Keltner playing drums, Jim Dickinson on keys, as well as Augie Myers,
Yeah.
me, Tony as bass player. He had
Duke Robillard.
Duke Robillard was there for a bit. But anyway, working with Daniel, it was interesting. His whole approach, I guess, was interesting in the way they mic'd things. Like the drums were mic'd 3 mics, and actually there were started out with Keltner, and then Brady Blade showed up. Not Britt, no, Brian Blade showed up, and so had both of them, and awesome. My seat was right between those 2 guys.
Oh, Keltner and
sat, in the studio, and when we're recording, they didn't want to really wear headphones, but you had to hear Bob's vocal because you had to know where you were in the song. And the song would be different every time you did it. So Brian, I think Brian was there so that Bob wouldn't just make a blues record. Bob was just doing it himself. He'd just play a blues record.
Yeah.
And he played on, Daniel played too. He just kind of would make suggestions here and there. Bob was great at going out and doing things, and the engineer, Mark Howard, was phenomenal. And some of the, most of it was written there in the studio. Bob had a spot in the back corner, and he'd sit back there and write, and we'd wait, and then we'd play something, and then he'd, I don't know, then he'd go back and write some more.
Yeah.
And, there was one song that went from this to this to this, started out in E and ended up in B flat, and totally different groove,
feel and everything.
Yeah. It was a pretty amazing process to watch.
So how did you end up playing with the Dixie Chicks? Again, this is pre-political stuff.
I don't know. I just got a call.
Yeah. So they had a road band, and then all of a sudden they got a whole new band.
Yeah, and then I came in and was musical director from the get-go. I didn't audition; they just hired me. most gigs I've gotten, I haven't auditioned for.
Yeah.
And I guess it's just, you're around long enough and people know what you do.
Yeah. And then did you put the band together?
I flew out to a gig with their existing band.
Okay.
And then they said, well, do what you need to do. So I fired a couple of people,
Yeah.
and replaced them.
Yeah.
And then we toured with them until, I don't know, 2001 to 2000. I left right before the trip to England.
Where they said,
Yeah.
where they exercised their freedom of speech.
Yes.
And other people exercised their freedom to not like them.
Right.
Yeah, because of that. Yeah. Yeah. Everyone had their freedom.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Were they good to work for?
They were great to work for. Early on, they were just starting to hit it big. And Wide Open Spaces, I think, was probably just hit the radio when I started with them. And at that point, we were still doing, like clubs and theaters and
fairs.
Things. And we went to, fairs, and went to Australia. And then the big tour, their really big first tour was the Fly Tour, and that was 2000. And it was great. And being musical director, I'm a pretty easygoing guy. And after a couple of weeks, we used ears. And something I've noticed when you use ears is people get their sound check mix and they have their show mix. And when you're at sound check, they're constantly going to the monitor and go, oh man, I got too much of this. I got too much. Can you do this, that? And so, he gets everything set. And then you start playing the show and everybody's, I need more of this. I need more of that,
Yeah.
And I've seen it happen over and over and over. So after 2 weeks of being out there, I said, is everybody happy with your mix during the show? Yeah. Okay, no more sound checks. So that was it. We did no sound checks. And me and the steel player played golf every day. So,
wow.
Yeah.
And everything went well?
Everything was great.
So no sound
Everything
check?
went smoother.
Yeah.
You're playing in huge arenas.
Yeah.
You don't need the band to tune the PA. It's the same gear every day. There's no point in it.
Yeah. The mics are all, close. I mean, the amps are all close. Everything's close mic'd, and and you've got in-ears, no wedges.
It's really counterproductive at that point.
Yeah,
is my theory on it. You're putting the poor crew through useless work.
Yeah.
I care about those guys too. I care about everybody.
Yeah.
I care about everybody a lot more these days since what I went through last year. So.
Yeah. So you mentioned going through something. So tell us about that.
Last year, last February, I was diagnosed with diffuse large B-cell non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Wow. Heavy.
And so last year was not a lot of fun. It was a trying year. I had surgery, I had chemo, I had radiation. Chemo is awful. Radiation was a walk in the park compared to chemo. But looking back on it, just shortening everything up, compressing it, because I don't really want to go through it much. But it was really more beautiful things came out of it. More good than bad. Yeah. The obvious bad part is the physical shit you got to go through. I can swear on it.
You can swear on the show. Yeah.
the outpouring of love from the Nashville community. There was a benefit show put on for me, and it brought my family and I closer together. I have a much better outlook on everything. I appreciate life so much more and people. I look at everything differently now. Yeah. And, it's as weird as it is, I'm glad I went through it, And I don't want to ever have to do it again, but it really opened my eyes and my heart. And it's a life-changing event for sure.
So when did you start playing with Delbert McClinton?
I started playing with Delbert, I guess it was 6 years ago. Okay. I had played with him. Rob McNally was his guitar player, phenomenal guitar player.
He's been on the Truetone Lounge.
Yes, I know. I saw him. I've seen several of the shows. Great show.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. And I'm honored that you've asked me to participate.
Happy that you could do it.
All right. Yeah. The first time I played with Delbert, Rob called me because his wife was having a baby, I think, and I'm pretty sure that was it. And could I sub for him? So I went out for a weekend and subbed for him. And then I was playing on a McCrary Sisters record, and Delbert and Gary Nicholson were there, and it was a break. They were singing or something, and Delbert and I were just out hanging, talking. And I brought up this guy, Foy Vance, who's you need to look up if you've never heard this guy. He's from Ireland, phenomenal singer, loop stuff. And he said, "Oh, did you see him on the cruise?" Because Steve Mackey told me about him, and he was on the boat. And I said, "No, I've never been on the cruise." And he goes, "You haven't? How come?" I said, "Well, I haven't played with anybody that's been on there, and I don't know, just never been invited." He said, "Well, you want to come?" I said, "Yeah." So he said, "Okay, you and Etta come. And
great,
you're my guests." So we're going on the cruise. This is 6 years ago, and about a month before the cruise, Rob called and said, "Man, I can't make it. I got booked on this session, and I really can't miss it. I don't want to miss this session." It was the first Lady Antebellum record.
Which was a big deal for him in his career.
Yeah, it really was. That pretty much was the springboard for his session career. And so I said, "Yeah, I'll play." Said, "Yeah, you can play with Delbert and Leroy Parnell and the McCrary Sisters." And
it sounds like a great gig.
So I went on, and instead of just being a vacation, now I'm working.
Yeah.
And then that was pretty much when I started with Delbert after that,
Been with him ever since.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and the cruise, that's my favorite week of the year, You go on there, you turn your phone off, and you just, it's music 24 hours a day, and just friends. And now it's like a big family reunion. You see so many of the same people.
When you were going through some of your treatments, were you... did anyone have to fill in for you?
James Pennebaker.
Okay.
Who played with Delbert years ago.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Phenomenal guitar player and great Texas blues guitar player. There's a thing about you got to be from there.
Yeah.
To play like that, I guess, Jimmy and Jimmy Vaughan's one of my all-time favorite guitar players for blues.
Yeah.
And Anson. And now I play with Anson all the time. Anson's always on there.
On a recent, I recently saw a clip of you playing with Jimmy Vaughn, with Delbert. So tell me how that came. I guess he played on one of Delbert's records.
Yeah.
Yes.
I co-produced that record and co-wrote probably 2/3 of that record.
Okay.
And there's one song that needed a female to sing the bridge on. It needed to be this sassy
Yeah.
And we're sitting on the bus and trying to figure out, man, who would be good for that? And it just hit me. Luann Barton it'd be the perfect voice. And Delbert and Kevin McKendry, the three of us produced the record. And they're like, yeah, that's it. So say, well, can you get a hold of her? I said, yeah, I'll call. I said, she plays with Jimmy Vaughn. Why don't we get Jimmy to play on it? So Delbert called Jimmy and we set it up, and Delbert and I flew down to Austin and went in a little studio there, studio Jimmy likes to work at, and cut Jimmy and Luann on it. And that was a great experience, sitting there recording Jimmy Vaughn.
Yeah. a lot of people don't understand, especially for Texans like myself.
Yeah.
Jimmy's kind of the guy, because people think more of Stevie Ray Vaughan, but his brother Jimmy Vaughn was such a huge influence on all the players, and most of them are more familiar even with Jimmy and a bigger fan of him than they are of Stevie Ray. Not that, Stevie Ray is a fantastic player, obviously. Was.
Yeah, absolutely. Jimmy was always the guy to me.
Yeah.
Over Stevie. Stevie's great,
Yeah.
Stevie's they're kind of opposites.
Yeah.
I think Jimmy said, Stevie plays like he's breaking out of prison.
Yeah.
And Jimmy plays like he's in a low rider Studebaker going 7 miles an hour.
Yeah.
He doesn't, it's a totally different thing.
Yeah.
Jimmy's a real purist, and it's interesting how he's changed, with the capo and the no pick.
Yeah, playing more with his fingers. Yeah.
But so anyway, we were playing in Austin a month ago at the Paramount, and I told before we went there, I said, "Man, let's call Jimmy and Luann and see if they'll come out." And I thought, "There's no way Jimmy's going to come." I said, "Maybe Luann will come," and it was like, "Yeah, Luann's going to come," and then the day before, I said, "Yeah, Jimmy said he'll come." But then Luann had something happen with her eye, and so she didn't make it. But Jimmy came, and he played. So he played on that tune that we cut on the record, and then they did another song that Delbert sang, and he just played on, and then had him come out and sing a song and play. I think that's the one that got posted. I was playing, and I'm thinking, God, I need somebody to take a picture or something. So I had my phone, and Jimmy played through James's amp.
Okay.
So James filled in for me while I was going through all the treatment, chemo, and all that stuff. But Delbert is such a sweetheart, sweet man, that he has kept James on. And so now it's both me and James in the band.
Yeah.
And so Jimmy played through James's rig. So I just pulled my phone out of the pocket and threw it over on a road case, and James picked it up and shot that video.
Very cool.
And then I had him, and then it was the encore, and he was just standing over there on the side of the stage, and I said, "Hey, man, you want to play again?" He goes, "Oh, okay." So then I had him play through my rig, and then got some shots
of he and James
playing. Yeah.
So tell us about the stuff that you and your wife Etta have done.
We just started doing a duet thing recently. And that kind of came because we've been working on an Etta record, and we really wanted to get something done for the cruise to have a new product out, because they sell merch on the cruise, and realized I'm not going to get this record done, so let's just record a little duet thing. And we just did it at the house, and something I could kick out in a week and a half or two. And so we did that, and we've been doing gigs with it. It's fun, and it's kind of turned the tables. She's always been the one singing and me playing, but I'm singing as much or more than she is in this thing. It's interesting. It's it's a different experience just sitting out there bare. I don't have no rhythm section or behind you. It's just me. Yeah. And she's playing percussion, and she's a really great percussion. got really good time.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so that's been fun.
Yeah.
You know, and no band to worry about. Although I take more guitars than I take on any gig.
You take a couple acoustics, or
I take one acoustic and I take a baritone and, well, I guess I only take 4 guitars. That's not that bad. Mostly open tuned. Resonator and National Res Electric.
yeah.
Those are cool things.
Yeah.
Which I played with Fogerty. I bought that when I played with Fogerty
Yeah.
before looking out my back door. Do, do, do.
Yeah.
I needed a resonator on it.
Yeah. Yeah. We missed the Fogerty. What was the Fogerty? What time did you play with John? That was after Dixie
It was
Chicks
after Dixie Chicks
and before Delbert.
and before Delbert. And that came about through the Dylan thing, really, because Dylan's manager also managed Fogerty.
Mm-hmm.
And he just called and said, John needs a guitar player. Would you want to do it? I said, yeah. And that was another one I didn't audition for. They just
You get the
took
call.
Jeff's word, and I got the gig, and I did that for a few years until I just couldn't take it anymore.
Yeah.
The music was great,
Yeah.
and the band my bandmates were great, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of other stuff that.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Enough said.
Yeah. Enough said.